Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of August 3rd to the August 9th, 2025, where I take a look at a couple of stories that caught my attention and give you my thoughts and my opinion about them. And we got 4 stories to cover this week, including the Indie World Showcase that happened this week, the second direct that Showcase Direct that Nintendo did for the month of August. A report coming out that seems to indicate, at the very least, of the idea of more PlayStation games coming to other systems. Nintendo doing a price hike for the Switch 1 and some of their accessories, and a survey that Nintendo put out that seemed to indicate questions regarding the whole game keycard situation. At least that's how some people see it, though. If you're interested where I got the source of this information, links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube or Patreon. And of course, timestamps will also be in the description of this video if there are certain parts of this video you wish to skip to as well. But before we get started, I like to do what I like to call the quick My 2 Cent, stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details. The first one has to do with a new game coming from Probably Monsters. It is a studio formed by the former CEOs of Bungie, a studio that's known for, the Destiny series and the upcoming Marathon, which got delayed this year, but supposedly will be out next year and everything. But anyway, they are basically preparing to launch or put out a trailer for their upcoming game called Stormlancers. Now, judging from what was shown from the trailer, at least from my perspective, it does look like it does kind of take a page out of, games like Contra, to even to some degree Metal Slug to a certain extent. So it certainly is an interesting title and one I will be keeping an eye out on. The other one, another trailer that came out this week is for the upcoming, and this one I think is one that's kind of interesting indeed. It's based off the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's basically a turn-based RPG to a certain extent, though. The game, I believe, is currently available on Steam, and from what I've heard, it's gotten some pretty good response from users who've played the game and all. Judging from the trailer for that one, it does definitely look interesting, and the idea of a turn-based RPG or the Ninja Turtles going to the RPG realm is kind of interesting indeed, and one I'll be keeping an eye out on. So this is one I'll be taking a look at. One other thing, though, so far it seems as though there are basically, I believe, no plans for this one to be released on the PS5 from what I've heard, which seems kind of odd if that's true, considering the game is coming to not only the Switch but also the Xbox as well. So it's just sort of a odd decision for the developers. Nevertheless, it is still something I'm going to be keeping an eye out as well. We also learned that the folks at Digital Foundry, which is known for doing, videos on, some of the technical sides of gaming and everything, has gone independent and has basically broken away from IGN and all, which certainly is interesting indeed, and I do wish them best of luck of whatever they do and everything. I've seen some of their videos, and they're not pretty bad or anything like that, although there was some controversies around some people's claims of some of the stuff IGN said leading up to the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 and everything. But in either case, though, it's nice to see them go independent. We'll see how well that they do. Going independent and all. We also learned that basically Starfield is targeting a 2026 release date, and the reports seem to indicate that this has to do with weak sales of the first expansion that came out. I think that was called the Shattered Space, which didn't get the best of response out there from a lot of folks and everything. So it'll be interesting to see how well this game does in the PS5 when it comes, supposedly, if the reports are true, that it's coming out in 2026. I have heard there are some claims that this could be making its way to the Switch 2, though. Whether that's true or not, that remains to be seen at this time. But in either case, it does sound like, at least if this is correct, though, that 2026 will be when PS5 version of Starfield comes out, and there are also belief that another reason they're aiming for that is that's sort of around the time when the second expansion for Starfield will come out as well. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but if you're interested in playing Starfield on the PS5, the report, like I said, there are claims that it will be out in 2026. We also learned that supposedly a leaker is claiming that a new Super Mario Bros. Collection is in development for the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Series. The claim is basically it will be based off of, I believe, 3 of the new Super Mario Bros. Game, New Super Mario Bros. DS, New Super Mario Bros. 2, and New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Now, as of right now, there has been no mention from Nintendo of anything like this, so I will take this with sort of a grain of salt. That being said, during one of the Mario anniversaries, though, Nintendo did release Super Mario 3D All-Stars, a collection of 3 of the 3D Super Mario Bros. Games: Super Mario Bros. 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. Why Super Mario Galaxy 2 was not part of that is beyond me in every shape and any form. But in either case, though, they have done this before. Whether or not Nintendo takes that similar approach or not remains to be seen at this time. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe this will be announced during the so-called what many believe the September Direct. Maybe it won't, but time will ultimately tell if this comes to light or not. We also learned that basically there are reports coming out that EA is working on several unannounced Disney games in development. From what we've been hearing, some of them are Marvel, some of them are Marvel, some of them are Star Wars. Some of them could be based off of Disney IPs with Mickey Mouse and everything. Whether or not any of these see the light of day, or whether any of these will make their way to the Switch 2 or not, remains to be seen at this time. We'll have to wait and see whether or not this will do well. It's from EA, so I'm a little bit cautious about this. But then again, Jedi Fallen Order did very well, so did Jedi Survivor, even though some people were not happy with supposedly the claim that the game was too heavily focused on ray tracing and all. But either case, we'll have to wait and see what EA may have in store in terms of if they are working on several Disney games and all. We also learned that Genshin Impact, at least on the PS4, is being planned to be shut down and all, which I would say I wouldn't be completely surprised by this to a certain extent, as I do think it's gotten to a point where they're moving away from the PS4 and be focusing on, the PS5 and of course the Xbox Series system, since Genshin Impact is on there, along with Zen Zero Zoneless. Again, I apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly and all. So, yeah, I'm not really completely shocked that they're shutting down the PS4 version of Genshin Impact. It's unfortunately one of the downsides of games that are either a live service or free to play in general. So, it is unfortunate, but not really surprised by this at all. And last but not least, we are learning that the workers at Raven Software have secured their first union contract with Microsoft, which I would say, if this is accurate, I believe this is good. I'm very glad that the developer, that Raven Software, were able to do this, though. It's certainly nice to see them decide to unionize it all. Again, it is up to the employees to decide whether they think unionization is the right direction to go or not. But nevertheless, it is happy to see that Raven Software has done that. Hopefully this leads to, hopefully this will lead to maybe better working condition than it was when it was under Bobby Kotick with Activision Blizzard and all, but time will ultimately tell down the road and everything. And in the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, the director put out an article about basically why Hank Hill moved to Saudi Arabia. For those who are watching the reboot or the new season of King of the Hill, which is on Hulu, though, it opens up with them coming back from Saudi Arabia after being out there for several years, and then coming back retired and everything. So it's sort of interesting, indeed, and it's worth to read and all. I've so far watched the first episode, and just like with Futurama, it's sort of just interesting to see it, especially Bobby Hill in his 20s now owning a restaurant. That's That's kind of clever, indeed, though. I'll have to watch some of the other episodes, indeed, but definitely worth a read and all. And last but not least, we have a report coming out from Disney that they will be stop reporting subscription numbers, I think, for Disney Plus and all, because they are going to conclude with merging Hulu with Disney Plus and all. Now, as some of you are aware, for those who own Disney Plus, you can put some content on there, like certain shows and everything, if you have subscribed to a Hulu account and everything like that. It's supposedly internationally, it will be replacing the Star, so Hulu will be available internationally and everything like that. And supposedly the idea is to do away with the Hulu app altogether and be it one with Disney Plus. Now, there's been some back and forth, what will happen and everything like that, what impact this will have to Hulu subscribers and all, and whether or not they are truly ending the app or the app is still going to be there and all. So there's some back and forth in this and everything like that, but supposedly they'll start doing this sometime next year and all. So we'll have to wait and see and hear more details from them though, but it does sound like since they have fully purchased all of Hulu from Comcast and all, it looks like Disney is moving more and more with integrating it, as it seems to be they're more doing the streaming stuff, kind of like trying to compete to some degree with Netflix and everything like that. So yeah, come 2026 though, Hulu is probably going to be a bit different than what we remember in the past. Whether people like this or not, that remains to be seen and all. Okay, with the Quick My 2 Cent part now done, along with the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with a survey Nintendo has put out recently though. Now, one of the things we've been seeing has been the back and forth between, or at least depending on your perspective, is the whole game key card situation, where it's basically you put the cart, Switch 2 cart into your Nintendo Switch 2 and you download the game through the internet though. And this has certainly, we've seen before in the past, has had some controversies, excuse me, depending on who you are asking. There are those who are unhappy about this because this goes against a lot of game preservation arguments, especially when you see a game like Cyberpunk 2077 go fit in the full 64 gigabyte cartridge, which I understand. I think that argument does hold a lot of weight and all. But then you have some analysts who believe that the argument isn't as big as a lot of people make it sound like it is, and that some people are blowing it way out of proportion, which I will say there may be some truth to that, considering Street Fighter 6 and Bravely Default HD both made it into the top 10 Nintendo games for June 2025, at least according to Satana numbers. Indeed, so it certainly is a controversial thing for Switch 2 owners, and one that I don't see going away anytime soon. Well, recently, Nintendo has put out a survey, which is unfortunately closed at this time, and it seems to indicate at the very least that they may be exploring the ideas of basically game key cards or something like that. In an article basically from Nintendo Life, it reads that Nintendo has already been doing a little survey gathering feedbacks of reported a few weeks back with regards to physical and digital games, including how game key cards are going down. Now, as reported by Eurogamer, the Big N is back with a fresh survey for those interested to get busy filling in. The latest survey asks a whole bunch of questions on how you feel about purchasing digital and physical media in various ways. Points to screenshots of the show. They want to know how strongly you feel about physical game cards actually having the game, whether or not you care about, and whether being in a store or buying offline affects your thinking. The survey is a good chance where whatever your thought is, to get stuck in letting them know loud and clear. So make sure they point out and click on the answers and everything like that. Despite multiple complaints from Switch 2 owners, developers have been praising game key cards, so it's unlikely it will be going anywhere for a while now. And there have also been reports about so far a manufacturing that may have at least have some ways to manufacture some of the cards or anything like that. They don't mention Switch 2, but it's believed to be that they could be used for Switch 2 and all. Now, putting aside how some people on the survey, not everybody, I just want to make that clear, I'm not saying this is going to be everyone out there. Some might be rude or make inappropriate comments here and there and all, but putting that aside though, it will be very interesting to see what comes out of the survey and whether or not Nintendo decides to do something about it though. Do I think game key cards are going away? Not necessarily. I don't foresee Nintendo abandoning game key cards anytime soon or anything like that. But depending on how Nintendo reads these surveys though, it could possibly, maybe for them to look into, perhaps maybe we need to look at offering other options to put the entire game into these physical media, into these Switch 2 game cards though. Maybe they could be looking at lowering the price of the 64 gigabytes Switch 2 game card though. That's a possibility. Other possibilities, it does sound like, at least from this other report from Go Nintendo, that maybe they're looking at having different file sizes for the Switch 2 though. Maybe a 32 gigabyte, possibly that, or possibly a 16 or 8 gigabytes, depending on if those options are available. So it does sound like, at least based from the survey, Nintendo is, I think it sounds like they're paying attention, and it does sound like they are possibly looking at other options. Whether those other options appear or not remains to be seen at this time though, but I certainly would like to see them look at other options outside of the game key cards. While I can understand the game key cards being used for games that may be above the Switch 2 64 gigabytes though, I can understand why some people aren't happy with it, especially if you have a smaller game and it's on a game key card and all. So we'll see what comes out of the survey. It's possible nothing may come out of the survey at all, but it's also possible we could get something like the 64 gigabytes file size, the price to put the game on there being lower to a different file size option. So we'll have to see what comes out of this survey and all. So overall, very interesting to see Nintendo put out a survey on this. It'll be interesting to see how people respond to it, especially with the whole game key card controversy, depending on your view on it though. But regardless of what direction Nintendo decides to go on this, I doubt that means that this is the end of game key cards at all. I suspect that game key cards are still going to be around with us for a while and everything. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, and this one has to do with Nintendo raising the price on some of their accessories and the Switch 1 system and all. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at a unfortunate news about Nintendo doing what is basically a price hike and all. Now, one of the things that we've noticed this generation, this was before, or at least what we saw around when the Switch 2 was being announced, everything like that, was the concern about basically a price hike. Some of it is the cost of some of these games and how expensive it is to make these type of games. Others point to, the economic uncertainty and the tariffs being one of those factors, and I believe the tariffs are certainly one of the major factors, indeed. Now, that whole situation with the tariffs happened around the time on April 9th when Nintendo showed off their Nintendo Switch 2 Direct and everything, and there were some concerns with, because of the tariffs, could the Switch 2 price go up or everything like that. Luckily, that wasn't the case, but unfortunately, at least the systems and the games, but the accessories, on the other hand, was a completely different story. And there were certainly some concerns down the line. Could this have sort of an impact on the Switch 2? Now, obviously, the Satana numbers came out, and it looks like, based off of them, despite the situation with the tariffs and the economic uncertainty, that did not stop the Switch 2 from being a success so far for Nintendo. But there's still some concerns down the road that things could change. That is a possibility, although, like I said, I think it's going to be too early to tell if that will be the case. Well, recently Nintendo did put out a statement in regards of this, regards of a price hike, and it can be confirmed. There's both good news and bad news coming from this, depending on which system you're getting and how you view this, though. Now, this is from Nintendo's official site, from their Nintendo news site, and this is what they had to say. Quote, Nintendo Switch pricing update. Pricing for the original Nintendo Switch, or Switch 1, excuse me, family of systems and products will change in the United States based on market conditions. Effective August 3rd, 2025. These include Nintendo Switch, OLED model, Nintendo Switch Lite, and selected Nintendo Switch accessories. Other Nintendo products includes certain Nintendo Switch 2 accessories, selected amiibos, and the Nintendo Sound Clock Alarm will also see adjustments. Pricing for the Nintendo Switch 2 systems, physical and digital, Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 games, as well as Nintendo Switch Online memberships, will remain unchanged at this time. However, please note the price adjustments may be necessary in the future. So, it's kind of both good or bad depending on how you want to look at it, though. The good news is that the Nintendo Switch 2 system, both physical and digital Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 games and Nintendo Switch Online membership. Good news is they're not seeing a price change or a price hike in any way, which is definitely good news indeed, especially for those who are trying to hunt down a Nintendo Switch 2. The bad news, however, is that it looks like the original Nintendo Switch system, along with its accessories, Switch 2 accessories, and the Alarm Clock Alarmo is unfortunately, and including some of the amiibos out there, basically are unfortunately going to see a price hike, and that is very unfortunate indeed. And to me, a lot of this does go back to the tariff situation indeed. It's something that I really don't think it should have been imposed in the first place at all. I know, putting politics aside on it, though, I didn't support the tariffs before, and I still don't support them right now. And it will be very interesting to see how long Nintendo can hold out in terms of raising the price for the Switch 2 until it reaches a point where they may have no other choice, especially with the whole tariff situation. I know because unfortunately there will be a point where they may have to pass the tariffs on to the consumer indeed, which is not something I appreciate a lot, though. So for now, it does sound like it indicate that the Switch 2 system is avoiding a price hike for now, but who knows at this point down the road, even down to possibly basically when the holiday season kicks around and everything like that. And it's also going to be very interesting to see how this will all play out, especially when Microsoft eventually releases their next system, along with Sony with the PlayStation 6. There are concerns it could be cost up to like $1,000. There's that concern indeed as well. Even the so-called ROG Ally Xbox, there are those who are looking at it possibly at $1,000 as well. So time will ultimately tell, though. So for now, this one is certainly a mixed bag indeed. So overall, great that the Switch 2 accessory, Switch 2 and Switch 1 games and Nintendo Switch Online membership is not seeing a price hike right now, but very disappointing for Switch 1 systems, Switch 1 accessories, Switch 2 accessories, certain amiibos and alarmos, which unfortunately are seeing a price hike. Now, how long Nintendo can hold off on doing a price hike for a Switch 2, that kind of remains to be seen at this time and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 3 and a interesting report that seems to indicate that it does sound like, or at least depending on how you hear it, that Sony may be more open to putting their games on other systems, kind of similar to what Microsoft is doing with a lot of their Xbox games as well. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of my 2 Cent system, my 2 Cent video, that meant by that. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look at basically a interesting quote that was made during Sony's fiscal earning that seems to indicate that it does sound like PlayStation might be putting their games on other systems out there and all. Now, one of the things this generation that we have seen that has been, depending on your look, some view it as alright, others don't, has been Microsoft's decision to put their games onto other platforms out there, breaking the so-called traditional view of exclusivity and everything like that. Now this position of them to take, though, has sort of been viewed controversial depending on who you ask. There are those who feel like this will hurt the brand itself. Others feel like this is the right move for Microsoft to do. Whatever the case is, it seems to have not stopped Microsoft from doing this stuff, to even going as far as putting like Gears of War Reloaded onto the PS5, with rumors that Starfield could make its way over to the PS5 sometime next year, and all, to even them openly more supportive of the Nintendo Switch 2. And we've seen that with Microsoft, though. For Sony, up to this point, they have basically mostly been focused on exclusivity for their system, very similar to what Nintendo has done. But we also have seen them dip their toes into releasing games onto the PC market, though. They did this with Ratchet & Clank, Sackboy Adventure, the Spider-Man games have happened, The Last of Us have happened, of course Helldivers 2, and that is now coming over to the Xbox systems as well. And of course, we saw, Lego Horizon Adventure has made its way over to the Switch 1, to be exact, though. So it's sort of been kind of an interesting generation indeed. Well, recently, there was a comment made by one of the higher-ups at Sony that seemed to indicate, at the very least, depending on how you look at it or how you want to word it, though, that seems to indicate that Sony may be more open to bringing some of their games to other platforms, particularly, the Xbox systems, to even the Nintendo Switch 2 and all. From an article from WCCF Tech, it reads that, quote, Sony announced its quarter fiscal earnings for first Q 2025, where we learned the PlayStation 5 console has shipped 80.3 million units as of the end of June. The whole games and network service segment registered an 8% year-on-year increase in sales of 936.5 billion yen, $6.35 billion, primarily due to the rise of third-party software sales, which was particularly offset by the negative impact of foreign exchange rates. As a consequence of the recent strong user engagement trend, Sony has upward revised their fiscal year 2025 forecast for sales slightly from last time to 4,320 billion yen, $23.31 billion, as well as the forecast operation income by 4% to 500 billion yen, $3.39 billion. Year-on-year user engagement continued to increase, with the numbers of monthly active users across PlayStation increased by 6% in June compared to the same month last year, reaching 123 million accounts. Total playtime for the quarter also increased by 6% year on year. But arguably the most interesting tidbits, at least for gamers, came from a substantial Q&A with investors, where Senior Vice President in charge of Finance and IR at Sony, this is what they said, quote, in the gaming business, we are moving away from hardware-centric business model more to a platform business that expands the community and increases engagement. The Q&A, they point out, is available here. Translation was shared on X, along with the news by Tokyo-based user Genkai JPN, who often reports on Japanese news. This aligns with recent Discovery job listings for a senior director of multi-platform and account management, which hints that Sony would bring even more games not only to the PC, but also to Xbox and Nintendo platforms, too, in an effort to increase PlayStation users, those exclusive monthly active users, or MAU. So far, it was believed that it might be limited to live service games such as Helldivers 2, but the caveat was seemingly not specific this time. If such a business shift were to be confirmed, it would mean that Nintendo alone will keep making first-party games for its own console only, essentially hurrying the end of the console wars. Now, obviously, again, you can read that in any way you want to read it. Some might view it as that they're just referring to just only live services games. Others are reading into it based on that hiring that was reported, that Sony is preparing to take perhaps the similar route to what Microsoft is doing in putting their games on a lot of systems outside of their ecosystem and all, which would be very, very interesting indeed if they do that all. And it's also possible they could have like Bandai Namco play a part in it. I mean, recently we're learning Bandai Namco is publishing the newest Hotshot golf game. So, and given the fact that Sony has invested some money into Bandai Namco, it does seem to indicate that perhaps maybe they're letting Bandai Namco publish, maybe some of their games or something like that. So there are many ways you could look at this though. And given the fact that we've seen, Horizon Adventure on the Switch 1 and everything, it does seem to sound like indicating that Sony may be more open to bringing their games to other systems. Now, whether that comes to fruition remains to be seen at this time. But if it does happen, it will be very interesting to see if this means current games that are out now, or maybe a dig through some of their old libraries, like maybe, who knows, maybe like the Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper games make their way over to other systems as well. So it does open the door to a lot of these possibilities, but time would ultimately tell. As for Nintendo themselves, I would say this. Given where they are right now, and given how the Switch 2 is being handled at this moment, I don't see Nintendo going down the route that Microsoft and Sony are doing at this time. That doesn't mean things could change down the road. There's always that possibility, let's be clear about that. But given where they are right now, I do not see them taking that approach, at least in the foreseeable future for the time being though. So yeah, if this report is correct, Nintendo may be the last of the big three console makers that basically has exclusive for their system and their system only though. Whether or not that changes down the road, who knows? But for now, that's basically where the Nintendo is right now, to be exact. So overall, very interesting indeed. We'll have to wait and see what comes out of this though. It may be a big deal. It may not be a big deal at the end. It could just be them referring to only live services games, but it could also mean that it could be a lot of their IPs could make their way not only onto the Xbox systems, but also to the Switch 2 as well. But again, we'll have to wait and see what happens down the road and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our fourth and final part, and this one is my thoughts on the Indie World Showcase that happened this week. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be talking about the Indie World Showcase that happened this week and all. Now, last week we had the Nintendo's partner direct and everything like that, which showed off a bunch of Switch and Switch 2 third-party games that were coming out. And while there were some good announcements here and there, I was very mixed on the presentation at its best. It wasn't the worst, but it wasn't their best one that they have done so far, to be exact though. So it was kind of interesting to see that there was going to be a Indie World Showcase that would happen this week. And this started popped up when a YouTuber by the name of Switchforce was starting to talk about basically Nintendo doing another Direct this week and all. Now, granted, I always take these information with a grain of salt because you don't know how accurate it is, but it did turn out to be true and everything, and supposedly he's currently talking about how we could see, the big Direct probably in September or something like that. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen, but we did have the Indie World Showcase, and while there certainly were basically some games that definitely caught my attention during this whole 15-minute presentation, I will say, just like with the partner showcase, it just wasn't as good as I think a lot of us hoped it would be though. So I'm going to break it down into what I like and what I didn't like, mixed, not 100% sure about. In terms of what I like, I did like the fact that they started off by showing us Mina The Hollower, which, judging by the gameplay footage that they showed, that definitely has a bit of an old school 2D Zelda vibe to it, and I think that is definitely a very good thing indeed. So that one basically is one I would definitely be keeping an eye out for. The next one the other one they showed was one by the name of Well Dweller. I'm sorry if I'm saying the name correctly though. That one also is interesting indeed. It's sort of another Metroidvania style type of a game, and I like those kind of Metroidvania style type of approach, so that certainly is neat. The next one is, the other one I saw that caught my attention was this one from Devolver Digital called Ball X Pit, which is sort of like this looks like a top-down roguelike 2D shooter and everything. Definitely is one I'll keep an eye out. I do think Devolver Digital does some interesting games here and there, so that one also looks very interesting. Glaciered, if I'm saying the name correctly though, that one is kind of interesting indeed. It's sort of like you're this 65 million years into the near future and all. You're this sea creature and in what looked like Earth being like underwater to a certain degree and all. It's a very interesting take, and one I definitely would be keeping an eye out indeed on this one as well. And then finally, last but not least, was UFO 50, which I heard that sort of is dropped right now and everything. And it's basically, it looks like 50 mini games and all, and that one looks like something I might try out here and there. As far as what I didn't like or mix though, putting aside the fact that Hollow Knight Silksong was not shown at this presentation, putting that aside, this presentation itself just wasn't, I just didn't think it was that, it was like, it just wasn't that great or anything like that. I mean, indie games can be kind of a hit and miss though, and I'm sure there are a different variety of indie games out there. Everyone has their own different tastes and everything like that, but this one just didn't really do it with me as much. Same with just like with the partner showcase though. Again, not terrible. Like I mentioned, there were certain games that did caught my attention that I thought was really interesting and everything like that. Mina The Hollower is, again, from the same folks who did Shovel Knight. That one was interesting indeed. So, I mean, there were some interesting announcements, but yeah, just this Indie World Showcase didn't click with me as much as, say, past games and everything like that. So it just was like a kind of mixed bag for me on this one, to be exact though. So overall, I would say this was a kind of Indie World Showcase though. Yes, there were some neat announcements though here and there, and there were certain games that did caught my attention and all, but outside of that, I just didn't think this one was good or anything like that. So unfortunately, 2 of the directs that Nintendo has done have been mid at best though. We'll have to wait and see if it's true that we see a actual general direct in September and all. Hopefully, if that does happen, we'll get maybe a release date for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, or maybe other games we're not aware of, to be exact. So hopefully we'll get that, but yeah, I would say I did not come away pleased with this one. This one was just mid at best, and it just didn't really click with me as much at all. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about the survey that Nintendo did? Do you think this is an indication that Nintendo may be looking at other options for, physical media, like for physical cards though, outside of the game key cards? Or do you think this survey may not really do anything at all? What are your thoughts about the price hike that Nintendo did though? Were you surprised that this price hike was going to happen? Were you not surprised at all? Do you feel that it's only a matter of time before Nintendo does a price hike for the Switch 2 system itself in any way? What are your thoughts about this report, the possibility of PlayStation games coming to other systems? Do you think that what one of the higher ups at Sony said is an indication that they are going to put a lot of their games onto multiple platforms out there, like Xbox, Steam, Switch 2? Do you think this is or do you think they're just mentioning that it's only maybe just limited to like live service games in any way? And what are your thoughts about the Indie World Showcase that happened this week? Did you think the Indie World Showcase was it good? Did you think it was bad? Were there any games that you thought stood out for you the most? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me, Patreon, or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, so you're watching this on YouTube or Patreon. Excuse me. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye.